Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squad for boxing news and views from around the internet. The young Australian prospect Justis Huni has announced himself to the heavyweight division, winning the Australian title against Faiga Opelu, stopping Opelu in 7 rounds. And this was overall a pretty good performance from a guy having his first pro fight. And this is why it is a statement to the heavyweight division, a statement of intent. And we could actually see where he is in his development. Remembering Faiga Opelu, maybe a top 60 heavyweight somewhere there or thereabouts. So it wasn't some sort of soft introduction. He actually had to go in there, break down a guy who had ambition, and ultimately he was able to do so. And so this video is not so much a post-fight review as such. I wanted to talk a little bit about the action, some of the stuff that I was liking, some of the stuff not so much, because there were some things I thought maybe, and remembering, in the context of this video, Justis Huni is a guy with limited pro experience, just the one fight, and overall I thought he did well. So it's hard to be too critical on him because clearly he's going to need a lot of development and seasoning. But from what we saw, I was really impressed. And obviously he's been doing well as an amateur, medaled at last year's World Championships. He's intending to go to the Olympics in 2021. But in the meantime, he's turning pro. He's going to get a few bouts under his belt and then drop back down to the amateurs. Well, seemingly that seems to be the plan. So it might be a little bit stop-start in terms of the what next for Justis Huni. But in the context of the amateurs, the scene at the moment being effectively cancelled to some degree, he's going to get some sparring and some good work, and these fights, like against Faiga Opelu, is going to be invaluable experience, not just for his pro career, but for when he does go to the Olympics, if and when that happens. But this fight, a 7-round performance against Faiga Opelu, stopping him. The towel came in after he really started to put it on Opelu. A really nice sort of right uppercut lands and a few other shots, some hooks. He bailed him up on the ropes and it was all over. I thought maybe it could have continued, but it was a case that over rounds, Justis Huni was breaking him down. There was a lot to like about the performance, and I'll get to the things that I didn't like, but first, a lot of positives. Remembering first pro fight, he showed very good hand speed. And actually, there was a comparison that I've seen sort of thrown around that Justis Huni and Ajit Kabayal do sort of look like each other. They sort of fight in a similar way. And actually, I can see that. They both do have really good skills, good speed, and similar dimensions, both 6'3". I can see that comparison and why people are making it. Maybe Justis Huni has more power. I mean, it's hard to say. But good speed overall demonstrated by Justis Huni. And there was a skill gap in this fight, and he was exploiting it. I thought he actually boxed well when he was from range. He was able to really dictate terms, but it was a case that when he was sort of coming into the inside, he wasn't as effective, but I'll get to that. He showed some versatility in this fight as well. We saw different sort of strings to his bow, as it were, turning southpaw and giving Opelu something to think about. But I do think he was more effective in the orthodox stance. Overall, when he was working his combinations, very fast, very flashy, very effective. When he was throwing 3, 4, 5 punch combinations, he was looking good. He was catching Opelu. And one of the features that really started to emerge in the fight was the body work. It was really starting. You could see that it was taking the stuffing out of Faiga Opelu, that he didn't like it. The further the rounds went and the more shots that he was taking to the body, the lower his hands were becoming. So, that was, leaving avenues for Justis Huni to really start, working the head, because that body work was taking the stuffing out of Opelu. And he moved well. I mean, good speed. He was moving well. He was able to, sort of, if he got bailed up on the ropes, if he wanted to, he was able to sort of circle off. He was using the ring well. I thought overall, he did a good job with his movement. And when he was boxing from the outside and moving, it was, complete control. Good left hook. There was a good uppercut on display throughout the fight. So, there was a lot to like about what he was doing. And in the context of heavyweight prospects turning pro, as I said, this was a much better fight against a guy with some ambition. And overall, he looked, relatively polished. Obviously, some of the things I'm about to sort of say that I didn't quite like so much. I mean, overall, you have to say that he's ready for, bigger tests, tougher fights. But obviously for a guy with 1-0, we're maybe not going to see that, especially with the context of the Olympics. So there might be more sort of opponents of this level. Maybe even he will dip down a bit lower than that. Apparently they do want to fast track him and his career, but it sort of really depends on circumstances, and is he going to sign with a big overseas promoter? Maybe there will be a run in Australia, similar to Joseph Parker had a run in New Zealand. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, Justis Huni, in the context of the sort of Oceania area, is the sort of biggest sort of prospect in the heavyweight division since Joseph Parker turned over in about 2012 and started to make noise. Ultimately did win a title. So I guess Justis Huni is linked up with Dean Lonergan too, who formerly did promote Joseph Parker. There is probably some threads that they will pull that will be similar in the way that they guide him. But obviously starting off your first pro fight, the Australian title, that turns a few heads. So I can imagine there's going to be a lot more eyes on Justis Huni, and if he can manage to go to the Olympics, do well, medal, his profile and stature is only going to grow. And if they continue to at least ahead of the Olympics, if he has another 1, 2, 3 fights or whatever, he's probably going to just incrementally, his profile, the buzz around what he's doing is going to go up. And just based on that one fight, he's already rated number 132 in the world on BoxRec, the number 6 Australian heavyweight out of 59. So, it's a bit of a statement for, the level of the fight that he's entered in. He's won the Australian heavyweight title in his first fight. Hopefully it's only up from here, and there was a lot to like, as I mentioned. Some of the stuff I was not so sort of hot on was the jab. Didn't really seem to be much of a weapon at times. Often just wasn't really throwing it. And I think against Faiga Opelu, he certainly could have controlled him even more through that jab. And obviously setting up his work off the jab, he could have done a bit more of that. He was often prepared to fight on the inside, but there were stretches where I sort of thought he wasn't really being effective on the inside. And given that he had the height and the reach advantage, significant advantages over Faiga Opelu, it was sort of lending itself to the only sort of fight that Faiga Opelu could actually have some success in. And the other thing that sort of connects to that is when he was sort of fighting on the inside, that was the sort of stretches where Opelu was having his best work. He was able to catch Justis Huni with the odd uppercut, the odd hook, and I did sort of think that maybe he got hit a bit more than he should have. But obviously, he's young, he's raw, he was just trying out a number of things in the ring there, seeing what was working, what didn't, against a pretty good opponent given the level, that he was entering the division at. But also, I sort of thought there were times where he was sort of sitting on the ropes, and it was voluntarily too, and just letting, Opelu just sort of tee off on him, and then he'd sort of respond. But some of it I sort of thought, it's maybe a bit unnecessary. But overall, there was a lot to like. I mean, maybe he's not the biggest puncher. There doesn't seem to be that sort of really elite one-punch power, but over the course of the fight, he did actually break down Opelu, and those body shots, it was really starting to take a toll. And Opelu, he was sort of trying to gesture Huni on quite a bit, but often that came after there was some good success that Huni would land. So, maybe Opelu didn't really have the best poker face, but overall, I enjoyed what I saw. I didn't catch the fight live. I was only able to watch it, 36 hours or so after the fight now. But, this is going to be one of the guys we're going to be talking about for years to come. And in terms of the Olympics, I mean, he will be one of the guys that will be in the discussion for fighters who could medal at the Olympics. Throw in Bakadir Jalolov as well. There's a number of other guys that, it's going to be an interesting Olympics if it in fact goes ahead. And there's no guarantees, even though it was delayed for a year. Maybe it will be postponed again. I don't know. But Justis Huni, first pro fight in the books, and it was a winner. Good fight, good announcement to the division. What did you make of it all? What are you seeing in Justis Huni? Who does he remind you of? And I did see a bit of Ajit Kabayel, that similar sort of style, similar frame, the movement, the speed, just the sort of way, the compact nature, the good skills, good technical ability. I think Justis Huni is going to be a name that's going to be on the scene for quite some time. Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.